One more fucking time. Let's go. TCK Pod, Candlestick Kids, episode 367. It is our last coaching changes episode. I am Dweez Nuts. You can ignore the first part of my name down there. I don't know who that asshole is. But next to me, Bobby LaMarco, as usual, to talk about the last couple of divisions of coaches. Are you sad to see this series go, my man?
I've been fighting back tears all day, to be honest with you.
You know, right? You were late showing up to the damn thing. I figured you were probably cleaning it up, retouching up the makeup. I like it. Hey, if you're watching this live, guys, jump in the comments, engage with us. Tell us how stupid my takes are and how brilliant Bobby LaMarco and all of his deep research is along with us as we go. If you're watching this after the fact, hit that subscribe button somewhere down there here on YouTube. If you're listening to the podcast, subscribe everywhere. Hit the fucking bells everywhere. Like this shit, share this shit, do whatever you can. Hit every button you can find, okay? You're not going to break us. But you might make us feel a little better on a day that's super sad for us. Bobby and I have been doing this for a couple of weeks now. Every couple of days we jump on, talk about some new coaches. Like I said, this is our last go. We're going to hit the AFC South today. A lot of change there. We're going to hit the AFC West today. Plenty of change there as well. These are two divisions that really got shaken up after this season. You'll see beneath me and Bobby our Twitter handles, I think they call them. Go find us on Twitter. Hit us up if you want to find the podcast, TCK_pod on Twitter, fantasy football _TCK pod if you're on Instagram. Hit the website, tckpod.com. Hit YouTube, our TCK Candlestick Kids channel. I don't know. Am I missing something? There's probably more places they can find us. What am I missing, Bobby?
We've said enough. Let's just get started, you know?
God, we have said enough. It just feels like it drones on and on and on when I do these things. All right, let's get started. Let's jump into the AFC South. Hang on. There's a little banner for that somewhere. Here it is. Big division. Actually, this is one of my favorite divisions in football over the last handful of years. Let's start with a team that, going into last season, they were a favorite as they've got probably the best GM in the game right now. One of, if not the best head coaches in the game right now in Frank Reich. It's the Indianapolis Colts. Frank Reich maintains his job as he should for a long time coming, but we've got a new offensive coordinator stepping in as Nick Sirianni was hired out elsewhere. It is Marcus Brady, who served as the quarterback's coach for the last 3 years for this same Colts team. Before that, dude spent 8, 9, 10 years in Canada. And before I let you jump in here, Bobby, I just want to say that it's really unfortunate that I have to say this, but Marcus Brady credits Mark Trestman, former Chicago Bears head coach, as a coaching mentor coming up north of the border. I can't say anything more about him. As soon as I saw that, I was done. I was off. So tell the people what to expect from the Colts offense.
Well, I mean, it's Carson Wentz, right? His infusion into this offense and how he's going to rebound from a down year in Philly. I think the biggest thing is, too, T.Y. Hilton, is he coming back? That's a big question mark. Marlon Mack looks like he's on the way out, meaning Jonathan Taylor is going to be the guy. They've proven that they're willing to give one guy a heavy workload, even though they have a guy like Nyheim Hines that's sprinkled in passing situation and has his moments. Jonathan Taylor is geared up, ready to go. And they did lose their left tackle, but this offensive line is still really strong, bringing back 4 or 5 starters. So you got to love that for Carson Wentz. I think the biggest thing for Wentz, though, is going to be the talent around him. He really struggled in Philly when he didn't have the talent. The offensive line was hurt, the receivers, you name it, they're hurt. Now, listen, you can say what you want, Jack Doyle and Mo Alley Cox and, Michael Pittman and Paris Campbell. There's still a lot of unproven talent. Yes, we like Michael Pittman. He did show flashes last year, but he wasn't a game breaker. He wasn't like his rookie season was completely dominant. So there is still a lot of question marks for the skill positions on this offense. But you got to like Frank Reich's creativity. I know you brought up something, I think I was on the Philly podcast, that their religious connection and those kind of things sometimes just helps with the mental aspect of the game. So I am looking forward to it, but I do want to see them add another player alongside Michael Pittman, because I don't know if Jack Doyle and Mo Alley Cox are going to be good 2A, 2B receivers behind a guy like Michael Pittman.
Well, let's not. I mean, I think Paris Campbell coming back is going to be a big part there.
Right.
Here's one thing that I did see about Marcus Brady specifically in my research that I thought was really interesting. So Frank Reich has this whole culture of like, it's very much collaborative, right? Between Sirianni last year, even Brady as the quarterback's coach had a lot to do with this offense, game planning in and out, week in and week out, and even bugging in people's ears between quarters, between drives, what they think should happen. I guess one of the jobs that Marcus Brady was tasked with over the last few years is pass protection scheming. He designed a lot of the pass protections for this team over the last few years. And look, that offensive line and that pass protection, it has been fantastic. So if he really does have a mind that can create those kinds of protections for his quarterbacks, maybe some good things, maybe some solid things. I don't think the offense changes very much, right? They kind of keep everybody in-house in order to make this happen. But look, we got a new quarterbacks coach as a result of him moving up, new running back coach, new offensive line coach, new offensive assistants. By the way, they brought in the passing game coordinator from Philadelphia last year to be an offensive assistant here. They're trying real hard to help Wentz out. But a lot of turnover at the positional, the positional coaching spots. Who knows how much that'll have to do with the offense. It is Frank Reich's offense, so it's probably going to be just as good as it has been the last couple of years. So let's move on to a team then that has a total change, total turnover, right? We've had a few of these in the league this year. This is the Jacksonville Jaguars. They were a real fucking bad team last year, but people can't help but be excited about what's happening. One, because Trevor Lawrence is probably going to be drafted onto this team. But two, because it's Urban Meyer who comes in here. Urban Meyer, who had an absolutely storied college career. And I should start this off by saying, look, his first head coaching job was in 2001, 2002. At Bowling Green State University. I happened to be a student at Bowling Green State University when he came to town, and it was it was the best years of my fucking life. Okay, NCAA game, ESPN Game Day comes to my campus. That was 4 days without sleep. It was a great goddamn time. We were winning. We broke into the top 10 at one point, and if not for Ben Roethlisberger, we would have busted the BCS that year. It was so fucking exciting. However, that said, he goes after that. He goes to Utah. He goes to Florida. Big things. Ohio State. Big things. But all that said, I fear a little bit that he ends up going the way of like a Nick Saban, Steve Spurrier, Lou Holtz, great college coaches that win a lot. But I think he might end up flaming out in the NFL. I know that's not a popular opinion right now. But my dad used to say this about Urban Meyer all the time. Every time he caught a game, my dad, an old football coach from way back, just hated the way Urban Meyer coached because, as he put it, he coached to win games at the expense of developing his players, preparing his players for the next level. And you know what? To my dad's credit, holds up a little bit. Let's look at the quarterbacks that Urban Meyer coached, right? Great teams, tons of wins, national championships. How do his quarterbacks do when they step up into the NFL? Alex Smith is still around, sure, but how about Chris Leak, Tim Tebow, John Brantley, Braxton Miller, J.T. Barrett, Cardale Jones, Dwayne Haskins? You know any of those names still in the NFL? Haskins is a Steeler now, but that team is so desperate not to put him on the field that they signed a 96-year-old Ben Roethlisberger. At the running back position, Chris Rainey and Mike Gillislee ran the ball in Florida for him. Of course, when he gets to Ohio State, Carlos Hyde, Ezekiel Elliott, J.K. Dobbins, different story. But I don't know that this guy has the chops to make it with NFL players, coaching NFL players to succeed in the NFL. I hope he proves me wrong. But I'm just not really sure he will. He's a very, very, very creative offensive mind, does a lot of things, very, very, very differently. In fact, he is in somewhat a big part responsible for the emergence of the mobile quarterback first in college and even in the NFL. A lot of what we see with these mobile quarterbacks come from guys like Urban Meyer succeeding so greatly at the college level doing it. So, the only thing I can tell you to expect from the offense with Urban Meyer at the helm is Trevor Lawrence going to run the ball. Okay. He's going to or whoever it is, right? Going to fucking run the ball a lot. Outside of that, we don't know what to expect. Maybe you can help us out here. New offensive coordinator, Darrell Bevell. What is Darrell Bevell going to bring to the insane creative innovation that Urban Meyer is going to bring? How are these guys going to balance each other out to put an NFL offense on the field every week? What do we expect?
Well, I will say this. His wide receivers have produced in the NFL. I mean, Michael Thomas, Curtis Samuel, we just talked about Paris Campbell. He can't really stay healthy, but he showed flashes. So, and the type of receivers that dominated Urban Meyer's system are those yards after the catch. Even KJ Hill,
Harvin, come on,
Percy Harvin, Terry McLaurin. The only thing I will say is that when I was looking at this from a Darrell Bevell perspective, Darrell Bevell has just an insane amount of experience as an offensive coordinator. So his Viking years, I mean, listen, Brett Favre, remember when he came back and he had those couple of years, he blew up that one season under Darrell Bevell. But the thing I noticed about Darrell Bevell, he's willing to take shots. Matthew Stafford, the last 2 seasons, has been towards the top in deep passes of 20 yards or more downfield. And Kenny Golladay, Sidney Rice, these kind of guys have excelled in this kind of offense, which you would say, all right, that's good news for a guy like DJ Chark. I think a lot of people are excited about Laviska Shenault because of Urban Meyer, but I do think there's a role for a guy like DJ Chark in this offense. That being said, Darrell Bevell had experience working with guys like Doug Baldwin and Percy Harvin, smaller interior receivers, guys that worked after the catch, had some good seasons under Darrell Bevell. So I do think there's a lot of opportunities here for the guys that are currently on the roster, especially when you infuse Trevor Lawrence into this offense. Now, another great thing about Darrell Bevell, his commitment to the run. He has been one of those guys where he's had Marshawn Lynch and Adrian Peterson, Chester Taylor, 300 carry seasons under him. Even last year, I mean, yes, in 2018, for example, or 2019, for example, Kerryon Johnson, they tried to actually feature him, and then he got hurt. We've already talked how we feel about Kerryon, but last year we saw down the stretch, DeAndre Swift started getting more work. Maybe Darrell Bevell hung on to the Adrian Peterson stuff a little too long from his days back in Minnesota, but at the same time, he does commit to the ground game. Running backs have consistently flirted with nearly 300 carries in a season, constantly in this offense. So there is James Robinson, for example, if he becomes the main back, that's something we could definitely look at. And then finally, the tight end position. So we just saw TJ Hawkinson have a top 5 fantasy season. Jimmy Graham had pretty productive seasons in Seattle under Darrell Bevell. Even Visante Shenko had 10 touchdowns in a season with Darrell Bevell. So I think there's a lot of room for optimism here, but I do like the fact that they will feature the guys, their best players. So I think Chenault's going to have a very significant role, and I do think DJ Chark, even though he's not your typical Urban Meyer receiver, I think he fits that Kenny G, Sidney Rice deep threat role in this offense with Darrell Bevell.
So I know you like to bring up connections and why guys might have got hired. I was curious how Darrell Bevell ends up on an Urban Meyer team. There is a small connection. Urban Meyer's protege at Ohio State, Ryan Day, who takes over after him, coached under Darrell Bevell years and years and years ago. And reportedly, there were several phone conversations between Ryan Day and Urban Meyer leading up to the Darrell Bevell hire. So they like it. I have one other guess as to why he ends up here. And that is, I think what Urban Meyer wants to do is emulate Russell Wilson's style of play for Trevor Lawrence. He also went out and hired Brian Schottenheimer as the pass game coordinator. So that's the two previous offensive coordinators with Russell Wilson. I think that tips his hat a little bit to how he wants to try to use, whether it's Lawrence or, a lot of people are saying maybe it's even Justin Fields, the guy he went out and recruited. So who knows, right? Who fucking knows? Yeah. But I think he wants to emulate maybe a little bit of what Russell Wilson does, might tip his hat and say this could be an offense that looks a little bit like the Seattle Seahawks have in the past. Maybe Joe Cullen, defensive coordinator here, coached some amazing defensive lines at Baltimore, Tampa Bay, even Cleveland years and years ago before a couple of decades doing it in college. So, we'll see if he can make that defense anything like it was 3 years ago. Probably not. They're either going to be working from the front end and back rather than the back end front. They lost a lot of weapons there, but that's defense. Nobody really gives a shit about the defense. So let's move on to another team with some coaching changes, and maybe not the new head coach in town that Deshaun Watson wants, but the Houston Texans go out and hire David Culley, longtime wide receiver coach in the NFL, going back to 1979 is when this guy started coaching receivers in the NFL. Coached Buffalo quarterbacks in 2017-18, pass game coordinator back to the wide receivers over the last few years. I don't think this is, if you just look at things like player development under him as a positional coach, you got guys like Tyrod Taylor, Nathan Peterman. You remember how bad he was? Not so great. You got the young receivers in Baltimore over the last couple of years. Look, Miles Boykin has flamed out. There were expectations for Boykin. He didn't meet. Yeah, he got hurt early. Even Hollywood Brown hasn't really been able to do a whole lot in this pass game. And look, David Culley was responsible for the pass game in Baltimore over the last 2 years. So that's troubling to me. We got other wide receivers that played under him as wide receiver coach, guys like Jeremy Maclin, Dwayne Bowe, Jason Avant. These are guys that flamed out pretty hard too. Expectations were high. Remember how big that contract Dwayne Bowe got was in Kansas City? Didn't really work out. He also coached guys like T.O. and D-Jax. He had Hines Ward and Tyreek in their rookie season, so maybe some love there. He's the new head coach. What do you know about David Culley? What do you think he's going to do? They retained Tim Kelly, offensive coordinator, been there a little while. And before I let you go, I should just say, I don't think Tim Kelly's a great offensive coordinator either. Last year, fourth in passing, 31st in rushing, even though they were paying $10.5 million to David Johnson. Could have been a productive year for him, but it wasn't in large, maybe because of the schedule. But you put Tim Kelly with a David Culley. What are your expectations? What positions might thrive here under these two guys?
Well, I think the first thing they tried to do was retain continuity for Deshaun Watson. So he comes in, and I think a lot of times, we saw this with Anthony Lynn, for example. He came over to the Chargers and he retained the OC and the DC. And sometimes guys do that because they say, if it's working, like Deshaun Watson, for what it's worth, yes, they did not run the football last year. They abandoned the run constantly. But at the same time, Deshaun Watson was balling out. Even when Will Fuller left, he was balling out. I mean, Brandon Cooks had a resurgence in this offense, and I think they were building on something there. And I think that's why Tim Kelly was retained. That being said, a lot of the stuff coming out now, it sounds like Deshaun Watson's on his way out. Even Culley in his most recent interview was kind of talking vaguely about the change in the team right now is on his current team. He's my quarterback right now, emphasizing now. It's just weird. So I think Deshaun Watson's out the door. From a game plan perspective, the one thing I did notice in Houston especially is that they do not feature running backs in the passing game, even when they had guys where they actually should be featured, like Duke and David Johnson. David Johnson did not see the amount of targets he should have had. They're just used to with Bruce Arians. And there's been more of an emphasis on vertical, deep outside threats like Will Fuller, Brandon Cooks, even DeAndre Hopkins on the outside. Wide receivers truly do dominate this offense. But they've had a rotation at tight end. I mean, that's the thing about these offenses. There's a lot of tight end targets going around to Darren Fells and Jordan Akins, but they're constantly splitting the work, right? So in these kind of offenses, I will say this, it doesn't look like on the surface that tight ends are featured, but they actually really are. And I think if there is any clarity, if somebody leaves, actually I'm trying to look now, doesn't look like either of those guys are leaving this year anyway. So it looks like it's going to continue to be kind of a logjam. Is Will Fuller going to return? I think if they let Deshaun Watson go, I don't see any real reason for them to bring back Will Fuller. They might also hit the reset button with a younger quarterback or whatever they do with that position. But overall, I do think that Brandon Cooks, if let's say, for example, hypothetically speaking, if Watson's back, Will Fuller leaves, I think Brandon Cooks easily could be a top 24 wide receiver in this offense.
Yeah, they're going to pass the ball probably a lot. I like Cooks, or I like that Cooks call. I don't think Fuller's going to come back anyway. I think Fuller wants an opportunity to do something different. And look, whether Watson leaves or not, the team keeps saying they are preparing to sit him for a season, for a whole. There's no chance, right? There's no chance. But they're saying it. I am concerned about the run game, like David Johnson, who they signed back at a much discounted price. You don't need to worry about drafting David. He was good last year, even with the limited work, but I don't think you need to worry about him.
Well, they just signed Mark Ingram, too.
Did they sign Mark Ingram?
They signed Mark Ingram. So Mark Ingram's now going to be on that team. I don't know what his role is going to be. I mean, last year they faced.
You don't want either of them. You don't want.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I think that makes it very difficult to trust David Johnson even in the 4th, 5th round this year.
Clears things up nicely for me. That's why you're here. You know fucking everything. Let's move on then. We're going to go to the Tennessee Titans. Mike Vrabel keeps his job, right? Because his team has been badass for the last couple of years, but he loses both of his coordinators. And his hires tell me that he agrees with you that continuity is fucking important because, you know, it's Todd Downing gets the promotion to offensive coordinator. Shane Bowen, outside linebackers coach, gets the promotion to defensive coordinator. Look, Todd Downing has done a lot of things over the years, been in the league since 2012, a lot of coaches, quarterback coaching positions. He was an OC for 1 year, and that's kind of sort of what I leaned on when I was doing my research because he called the plays for the Oakland Raiders in 2017, a year that Derek Carr made the Pro Bowl. By the way, Derek Carr made the Pro Bowl 3 times, and at all 3 times, Todd Downing was his either positional or offensive coordinator coach, and he has never made the Pro Bowl without Todd Downing. That said, nothing stands out to me in the Todd Downing Todd Downing led Raiders offense. They were 16th in passing that year, 25th in rushing, 23rd in scoring, 21st in scoring efficiency, 28 in turnovers, 12th in third down efficiency. They were 7th in red zone efficiency. So maybe that. I'm not overly excited about this hire, but this offense is already great, and I see very little changing in scheme. So it's still a full go for me with those Titans. Do you agree, or am I an idiot?
You're not an idiot. I'll tell you that.
Thank you.
But I will say this. Todd Downing, they actually got rid of – they were actually kind of growing. You just talked on back-to-back season. Derek Carr hit the Pro Bowl. And then they let go of Bill Musgrave because Jack Del Rio at the time was worried that Todd Downing was going to get an OC job. So they actually got rid of Bill Musgrave. It was working, but they got rid of him anyway so they could promote this kid. And it didn't work out. The numbers truly show it didn't work out, and I totally get that. But when I was actually looking at this deeper, there was a lot of Derek Carr missed the game. Multiple games were missed by Cooper and Crabtree, and there was a couple things. So there was 11 games that I actually looked at where everybody was healthy, and I wanted to see what it looked like when all the guys were on the field. And when I actually looked at that, there was some things that were slightly alarming to me that, you know, I think that could cause a little bit of a problem. Now, I totally get it. If it's not broke, don't fix it. But last year, the Titans were number 1 in the NFL in play action pass percentage. Under Todd Downing, the Raiders were 3rd last in play action pass percentage. That's a little alarming to me. It just shows, yes, maybe it's not going to be a complete 180, but it could start leaning a little away from the things that are working now. So that's one thing I caught. The other thing was that he did have Derek Carr had his most deep passes in a season in the sense of percentage of passes down the field. So he does attack downfield, even for Derek Carr, who's never been over 12% in his career, actually got over 12%. And in those 11 games, at 12.6, which is pretty good for him, featuring guys like Amari Cooper down the field. They also are very pass-heavy in the red zone, which is another thing I was looking at too, which could be a sign. I know it's Derrick Henry. When you get down there, you run. But it was very notable because they had Marshawn Lynch, and Lynch was still a beast. He was still averaging over 4 yards per carry. You know, he was still featured pretty much on that offense, and they still went away from him even when he was healthy on the field. They actually threw the ball at the 26th lowest, the 6th highest clip in the NFL percentage-wise in the red zone. So that's just something I thought was really interesting. They're throwing a lot, which means Tannehill maybe could have a slight little bump in his touchdowns if they throw a little bit more in the red zone. And then the final thing I will touch on too is the tight ends. So Jared Cook actually was on the team at the time, and he was featured on that team. So he was 7th in end zone, red zone targets that season, 13th in end zone targets, and 8th in overall targets. So there was a serious role for tight ends. And with Jonnu Smith going out the door, I know it's not a real sexy name, but Anthony Ferguson showed some flashes a little bit when Jonnu Smith was out. So
Anthony Ferguson. Come on.
I know. I'm sorry. I blacked out. Forgot I said it. But I was just saying, it's just something that was notable because Marshawn Lynch, they did not feature running backs on that team when Downing was. So it was pretty much Cooper, Crabtree, and then Cook. So that could be something we see. But another thing, sorry, last point. Apologize. One more. Cooper and Crabtree kind of flipped roles, right? So Cooper was like the deep threat, the guy. He did get the most targets, but when they got to the red zone, it was Crabtree. Now, if you combine those two, you can get AJ Brown. So you know what I mean? So like, it got me a little excited because who's going to be the guy that if Corey Davis leaves in free agency, AJ Brown could take more of a featured role in this offense, especially with all those targets gone. When I was looking at, he could be the best of both worlds. He could be Cooper in the deep passing game. He could be Crabtree in the red zone. We're talking about serious fantasy gold there.
Yeah. I mean, if you can capitalize, because that Michael Crabtree year was fantastic, man. I had him everywhere I could get him, and it worked out. It worked out real nicely. All right, so that is the AFC South for you. Before we move on to the AFC West, let me throw you up the Jersey Jungle. Look, they pay some of our bills, so we get to talk about them a little bit here, right? On Instagram, you hit these guys up a DM at the Jersey Jungle. Let them know that the guys over here at TCK sent you. Use that TCK coupon code. You see the deals below. These guys make beautiful jerseys at half the regular price without even using the discount codes. Most places, they'll make you custom jerseys. They do the NFL jerseys. They also do jerseys for every other sport you can imagine. If you won your fantasy league, go get a custom jersey with your team name on the back, 69 across the front, or whatever you want to do. If you're all about draft season and you're begging your team to go out and get that one guy that you love, maybe go get that jersey. Go get the Jacksonville Jaguars Trevor Lawrence jersey to wish it into existence. I don't know. Do whatever you want, okay? Throw the thing out or burn it when they don't draft your guy, because it only costs you a handful of dollars here at the Jersey Jungle. So again, get at these guys on Instagram. That's the best way to do it. Send them a DM. They will have a conversation with you about what you want to make sure you get it right. That is service. Use our code, get a deal. All right. That's out of the way. Is it? There it is. That's out of the way. Not that I want to get it out of the way, right? Like, they make beautiful jerseys, and jerseys are fucking sweet, but
nice recovery.
We got to talk about the AFC West here. The Denver Broncos are going to be our first team. No new coaches. Vic Fangio going into his third season here. Pat Shurmur, his second season on the team as OC. Ed Donatel stays there as defensive coordinator. Pat Shurmur's when I think of offensive coordinators that I want on my team, Pat Shurmur speaks to me as a fantasy owner too, because there are good weapons on Pat Shurmur teams. What do you like from this offense? Expect from this offense? Maybe they kind of settle things down a little bit with some of their injuries. Their quarterback situation sort of figures itself out. What do you think we should expect to see from Denver this season?
Well, this is kind of one of those teams I target, the second-year leap. I love that. And I'm as a Giants fan, I was a big fan of Pat Shurmur. I like what he did with guys like Evan Ingram and Saquon Barkley, even Daniel Jones in his rookie season. Now, the only thing holding back this offense is Drew Lock. It lives and dies by his growth this offseason, because they're actually getting reinforcements in the offseason without making any free agent splashes. So Cortland Sutton, everyone forgets that guy was an emerging true number one wide receiver who's going to be coming back from injury. They also had their free agent, main free agent right tackle, Ja'Wan James, who opted out because of COVID coming back. So now you got two really good starters coming into that offense. And now you have Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, KJ Hamler, Tim Patrick, Noah Fant, all on that offense with Phillip Lindsay and Melvin Gordon. I mean, that's a loaded offense with a very experienced play caller. So I think the biggest thing that in the back of my mind is, do they bring in a guy like Ryan Fitzpatrick, who will set a benchmark for Drew Lock? Like, Lock, you got to play at least at league average to get on this field. That's what I want to see, because this offense could really take off in the second season. And the thing with Locke is I'm not 100% sure how I feel about him just yet. He just seems like he's a big arm, not a lot of touch and accuracy. But at the same time, like with all those weapons and a solid offensive line, it's like maybe he could be okay. But it's going to be tough to rely on Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, and all of them to consistently be fantasy assets because they're all talented. And if you don't have a guy who could promote that many pass catchers in an offense, they're all going to probably not hit their ADPs. So I think I'm a little concerned from that perspective. But if you infuse Ryan Fitzpatrick, I'm buying. I might just go to the clearance route. I'm just taking them all. Like, I don't care,
And you're going to go get the Fitzpatrick Broncos jersey from the Jungle folks, aren't you?
Exactly. I'm going to Jersey Jungle. Every Fitzpatrick jersey, every team he's been on. That's like $2-3.
Too many jerseys, baby.
That's too many. Yeah. No, I'll get like 100% discount for that. But anyway, right. I think the other thing, though, is like I know Phil Lindsay is a restricted free agent. It doesn't seem like he's going anywhere. But it did start seeming like a little bit they were starting to feature Melvin Gordon a little bit more. He offers a little bit more in the passing game. I think the running back position, I think overall, unless there's a huge change in the quarterback position, it's going to be really tough to trust these guys at their ADPs.
You know what? The one thing you said really, really struck home for me, and it's just that there are so many weapons on this team. Overwhelming for a young quarterback. He will, if he's going to succeed, he's going to have to pick out a favorite target or two, and we just don't know who that's going to be. Right. You know, Cortland Sutton seems like he's coming from behind just because he missed a whole year, but a lot of these guys spent some time hurt. So, that offseason might give us a little indication of who Locke might like if Locke is the quarterback, but it's hard thinking now or even in an early fantasy draft season which one of these guys you want to take unless you can get them super late. You just don't know. You're rolling the dice, and rolling the dice can be tricky. All right, let's move off of who's up next here. We got the LA Chargers. I think we got the LA Chargers next. I don't know. I lost my spot in my notes over here. LA Chargers got a couple of new coaches on the offensive side of the ball. Well, not really on the offensive side of the ball. Brandon Staley, who played quarterback, is a defensive coach somehow. Spent 17, 18 with the Bears, coaching linebackers, moved over to the Denver Broncos, coached the linebackers there. Defensive coordinator for those LA Rams last year. Just goes to the other side of town here to head coach the Los Angeles Chargers here in 2021. I need a drink.
Take a moment.
Tell him something about Brandon.
I got you. I think the biggest thing for me is Joe Lombardi coming in as the OC for this offense. He's been on the Saints staff under Sean Payton forever, since like 2009. And the one thing I will say, though, is he did make a stop as an OC for 2 seasons with Detroit. And he tried to fit a square peg into a round hole. And what I mean by that is he had Matthew Stafford and Calvin Johnson, and he tried to turn Matthew Stafford into this quick-hitting, short pass-throwing quarterback. His deep passing rate was one of the worst in his career on a percentage basis, and it was very shocking because I'm like, I thought when he's coming in, you got this Sean Payton offensive mind, very creative, but that's why he flamed out. That's why he got fired midway through the second season, because he was not utilizing Matthew Stafford the way you should use Matthew Stafford. He was not using Calvin Johnson as the way you should use Calvin Johnson. His offenses are more geared toward guys like Golden Tate, who he tried to feature a little bit more. The good news is he has the pieces to fit perfectly into what he wants to do, except the quarterback. Justin Herbert does not seem like the quarterback that is going to be that dink and dunk, quick-hitting quarterback. Maybe he can be. He did show some good connection with Austin Eckler this past season, but that's the type of offense that Joe Lombardi wants to run. He has Keenan Allen to fit the Michael Thomas role, Austin Eckler to fit the Alvin Kamara role. And that, I'm not saying it cannot work. Justin Herbert just doesn't seem like the type of quarterback the things he was doing with Mike Williams and Jalen Guyton in the deep passing game. That's where he flourishes. I know if Sky's listening, I love Justin Herbert. Sky, relax, not saying anything bad. He's the man. But that's what worries me is that I'm hoping that he develops an offense this time around that fits Justin Herbert's strengths. However, the good news is guys like Keenan Allen easily could fit right into that Michael Thomas role. I love this fit for for Keenan Allen. I love this fit for Austin Eckler. He has that perfect blend of the Alvin Kamara role in this offense. And actually, one of the craziest stats I saw, in 2014 when he was OC for the Lions, he had 3 running backs with 50 targets in a season. 3 different running backs. That's unheard of. The following season, Theo Riddick had 98 targets. So that tells me Austin Eckler is going to have a featured role in the passing game, which is great. And also the tight ends do have a role in this offense as well. We saw guys like Jimmy Graham really flourish in the Saints. They actually drafted Eric Ebron to kind of take over that role in the offense early in his career with Joe Lombardi before Lombardi got let go. And then finally, Jared Cook in New Orleans most recently did have some tight end one season. So I do think Donald Parham, who right now is the tight end one of that offense, could be a sleeper.
fucking names, man. Don't draft Donald Parham. Jesus.
Yes.
Christ. Hey, did you know that Joe Lombardi coached Brandon Staley at Mercyhurst University in 2005? He was his OC and his quarterbacks coach. That's why he got the job here, because he knows him from way back. You hit a couple things right on the head, right? Like his offense is all pass. I mean, 62% of his plays in his first OC season passes, 70% in his second season in Detroit were passes, and 30 plus, I think it's 30.6 or something percent of all of his offensive passes went to the running backs in Detroit. And you know who he had at wide receiver. Pretty much this is an absolute full fucking send on Austin Eckler. He's not going to do shit in the running game. They're not going to run the ball at all on this team. It won't surprise me if Justin Herbert throws it 650 fucking times. Keenan Allen might have 160 targets. Austin Eckler might have 120 targets, and that might be the entirety of the team here, right? Like, that is not out of the realm of possible on this team, which says they may struggle to win games, but they will help you win fantasy matchups like crazy if you go by these pieces. I think it's a good fit. Ronaldo Hill is the defensive coordinator there. I don't know a goddamn thing about Ronaldo Hill. So let's move off of that team onto another team with no coaching changes. Now, this one, is so shocking to me, right? Andy Reid, obviously still Andy Reid, but how the fuck is Eric Bieniemy still in Kansas City? You know what I think? And tell me what you think about this. I think they should consider a rule change where there cannot be any coaching interviews until the playoffs are over, because that's a big part of it, right? It happened with Robert Saleh last year when he was defensive coordinator for the 49ers making their run to the Super Bowl. These guys, most of the positions are taken by the time they can even interview, unless they want to interview during the playoffs, which is a character flaw right there. So I think they should change that rule, give guys like this an opportunity. Do you like that change, or do you like that, he gets to stick around? I know you like the continuity of it.
I do love the continuity. I agree. I think the thing is that drives me crazy is that's kind of a resume. Like, you're bringing an offense to the Super Bowl. That should be building your resume. You should want to wait for that guy. He's only done it back-to-back years. We've seen the history of Andy Reid's disciples. They've all been pretty good for the most part. Matt Nagy, sure he's still out there. He's your guy.
Well, yeah, look, he had a great season. Great fucking season.
Yeah. So I agree. I don't know about the weighting of the rule, but at the same time, like, I just don't get it from an organizational standpoint. A guy who's been a Super Bowl champion, developed guys like Patrick Mahomes. Like, I would like to miss with that kind of guy if he's not going to work out.
I think for those other teams, it's like, hey, we got a guy that we like. We don't want to risk waiting because we might lose him and not get Bieniemy. So there's something in there. But yes, Bieniemy comes back. This offense should be exactly what this offense has been over the last couple of years, which is nothing short of miraculous on the field and on your fantasy screen there. All right, look, it's our last team here. It's the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, Gus Bradley is coming in as defensive coordinator. That's a change. But otherwise, it's John Gruden and it's Greg Olson. I want to say this about Greg Olson. I think Greg Olson is one of the worst offensive coordinators over the history of this league that keeps getting hired, and he's had jobs forever. But if you look at his 13 years as an offensive coordinator, including the last few years with the Raiders, his offense is average 20th best in offensive yards and 22nd best in points. And there are very few outliers in either of those. So why does he still have a job? I don't know. He sucks Gruden's dick real good or something, but it's garbage. And this team and this offense and the good players on this team has some solid players that have a lot of potential. Josh Jacobs is one. Darren Waller is going to continue to be Darren Waller. Some young receivers, even Derek Carr himself, they are never going to get much better. They're never going to be able to develop on this offense because it's not a good offense. And it's because of this offensive coordinator.
Interesting. I mean, listen, I think Gruden kind of runs the show there. I don't think it's really –
he sucks ass too, man.
I mean, listen, I can tell you, from what I've seen though from the last couple of years, is that they gutted once they let go of Mari Cooper, they gutted their receiving core. Crabtree left, and there was like a solid 2-year period where they didn't have anybody on the outside. And then of course Cook had a decent year, and then Darren Waller last year. I mean, I'm sorry, but Derek Carr is not a generational quarterback who's going to elevate a bunch of talent. But then that being said, Nelson Aguilar had a career with him, so when you give him some type of talent, he has shown that he can win football games. I mean, Darren Waller was a nobody for the longest time. He comes to this offense and he flourishes with Derek Carr. Now, my thing is, though, is Henry Ruggs going to take the next step? Is Brian Edwards going to be able to stay healthy and get on the field? That's what's going to have to take this. It's going to have to be the skill position players that take this team to the next level. It's not going to be Derek Carr. He's kind of plateaued as a quarterback. He needs players around him to take the next step. He's not going to do it on his own. So I think it's going to ride on Henry Ruggs. If we're hearing reports that he's healthy, looking good, if Edwards is on the outside, those two guys on the outside with Aguilar on the slot with Darren Waller, now we're talking a little bit with some potential talent to take the next step. The problem is, though, they just gutted their offensive line. I mean, Gabe Jackson's gone. Richie Incognito they let go. They just traded Trent Brown. That stuff worries me. And the same thing with Kansas City. I know we kind of jumped over them too, but they let go of 2 linemen. They just lost their center as well because they have their money elsewhere. So that stuff is stuff we have to be aware of because we just saw it 2 years ago. Remember Sean McVay, the greatest offensive mind in football? Well, you don't give him an offensive line, that offense went to shit. And honestly, that's stuff we have to be aware of because you take away talent from that offensive line, Derek Carr is not going to compensate for a bad offensive line. So if they don't make moves to, either bring those guys back at lower costs, those are things you definitely have to monitor this offseason because it would make a huge impact.
So I think you were wrong about one thing and right about another thing. I think you're wrong about Derek Carr. I think Derek Carr, if he would just be unleashed from this offense, which Greg Olson's schemes are so fucking basic that you and I could go out there and call a defense to shut him down. It limits Derek Carr's options on the field. It limits Derek Carr's read progressions. It's just not a good offensive scheme. And I think given a better system, Derek Carr could be explosive, and he's also missing the pieces. I actually think I like Brian Edwards a little bit better than Henry Ruggs if you're going to take a dynasty shot. I think over the long term, Brian Edwards offers a little more. It's not going to happen for either of them this year because the offensive scheme says throw it to Darren Waller, hand it off to Josh Jacobs, and that's about it.
Yeah.
But you are very right about the offensive line thing, and this goes for everywhere, right? Like I'll tell you all day, the coaches on a team are the most important thing to pay attention to in the offseason for fantasy football purposes, schemes that coaches plan to run. The second most important thing is the offensive line. I don't care how talented you are. I guess Dak Prescott kind of tried to prove us wrong last year a little bit in Dallas as they lost all their pieces. But I don't care how talented you are if people aren't blocking for you in front of you.
Yep.
Like nothing's going to work. So certainly pay attention to those lines. Watch what these coaches are going to be putting together on their teams come training camp. If we get a preseason this year, watch some of that. Know what schemes are coming to these teams, and you will have a better idea of where you can find value, where you can snipe some of your other fantasy managers in your league and get the guys that nobody else saw coming because that's a guy that's going to be featured there. That's it for our coaching changes series. I don't know. I think next week it's mostly going to be Sky and Lucas diving into free agency. Yeah. Free agency opens on Monday, if I remember correctly, which is so exciting. You and I talked last week or earlier this week how exciting it was just to see the franchise tags.
I know, right?
Man, next week is a beautiful week. After that, I think we're going to hit rookies here for you guys on the TCK pod and get you ready for the draft. Over the next month or so, man, teams are going to come together. And these coaching staffs that we just ran through over the last couple of weeks, they're going to put their rosters and their depth charts together, and they're going to start to be able to actually plan some football. All good stuff, all very exciting. What are you looking forward to most from here on out in the offseason?
It's got to be where players fall. I mean, that's obviously the next thing. I can't even think too far ahead. I'm just ready to go. Where is Kenny G going? Exactly. I'm just, that's what I know. Nothing else. Don't care. I mean, honestly, because it's just exciting to. I mean, we're always wrong, right? I feel like 2 years ago, I put together a 5 players where they project, and I was wrong on every one, right? It just never works out that way. But at the same time, it's just fun just to, think of the new opportunities and see what guys can do in new places. And it just makes fantasy football fun. But don't forget, continuity matters, everyone. So just remember that.
Year, guys, second year system bumps. All right, before we go, tell the people where they can find your written stuff beyond just what we do here, because you're all over the place, man.
Yeah, expandtheboxscore.com. I also write for football.rasball.com. And we also have during the season, I write for Draft Sharks, which is a weekly article about just game previews and writing about what happened in those games.
Fuck's sake, you're busy, man. All right, guys, that is it. TCK Pod episode 367, Coaching Change Series finished. Jump back on next week to see what Sky and Lucas have for you. Hit the subscribe and the bell buttons, and you don't have to worry about it. Dewey's Nuts here. Bobby's over there, and we're done.